Morning, my dear students. I hope you remember that today, as per the schedule, we are going to discuss the epidemiology and prevention of malaria. Malaria had been a very important, very interesting topic to me from my beginning of my career. Here I would like to recall, I joined Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, way back in 1983. Then I used to suspect malaria when a patient comes with fever, and I used to prescribe anti-malarial drugs. My students and my interns who accompanied us to the camps and all, they used to find fault with me. They used to say that, sir, we have not seen even a single case of malaria here. Why you are prescribing malaria? Then I apologized to them and saying that I have come from a place where malaria is a very common problem, endemic problem. So my mind is always, thinking about malaria whenever there is a case of fever. And such a place where there is not even a single case of malaria way back in 1983 has become a hot spot for malaria after about 10 to 12 years time. So by 1995, we used to get almost 3,000 reported cases of malaria every month. And every household, they used to have a case of malaria. So how a place which is totally devoid of malaria has become a place full of malaria. It's a big story. It's a Mangalore experience which I had. And I simply want to say that the human habitation and human lifestyles, human ways of living are responsible for the resurgence of malaria. And to your information, I just want to tell you that malaria is one disease which is very, very closely linked with the development of an area. The economic development of an area is closely linked to malaria. One more point I'm sorry for this interruption. One more point I would like to tell you is that wherever there is a high level of real estate activity, we found malaria creeping in there. So let me give you a little more information on malaria. It is a re-emerging health problem. We had almost removed malaria from this country. We were rejoicing, we were enjoying, and we were celebrating parties when we thought that malaria is almost negligible. But after due, negligence, we got malaria resurgence in this country. So it's an excellent example of re-emerging health problem. It's a major communicable disease. Literally means it's bad air. Mal means bad. Area means air. That because they used to think in the past that a bad and vitiated and polluted air is responsible for malaria. Even till today, there are certain people who believe this, and they start saying that, sir, I visited one place. That place has got a very bad air, so I got malaria. Okay. And distributed in many developing countries. Developed countries almost they have eliminated or eradicated this disease, but now malaria is still present in a large way in most of the developing countries, including our country. It is responsible for high level of morbidity and premature death, especially when a person develops malaria, especially the cerebral type of malaria. It is almost 100% sure that he will die of cerebral malaria. Especially this disease affects small children. Easily prevented, but due to negligence, it is still existing. It's closely, I told you, it's closely related to the human development and caused by an organism known as Plasmodium. It has got 4 types of subtype, the species, and it is strictly transmitted by anaphylaxis, because there are some scientists, they describe that it may be transmitted by other mosquitoes, but there is no truth in this. Only Anaphylaxis till today is the vector for malaria. Historically speaking, it must have originated in Africa, as it is case of many other diseases. Reported since primitive times, a large number of mummies in Egypt, when they have seen, they had a very big stomach, and we presume that it is the enlarged liver and spleen. Brought to New World by trans-Pacific voyagers and slaves of Spanish colonies. Mosquitoes existed since time immemorial. Please remember one thing, that mosquitoes and all other insects are our parents, right? When we were not existing, mosquitoes and other insects were existing on this. That means we have occupied their place. Do you understand this? At one time, all mosquitoes and other animals are there, and we have occupied there. We have evicted them, and we have taken their place. And all the mosquitoes and other insects, they have got a very long and adaptive relationship. They have got a very long adaptive relationship. So it is so difficult to control or prevent or kill a mosquito. Hippocrates has described malaria in 4th century BC itself. He has clearly defined that there is a fever, chills and rigors, and a person may have the intermittent fever. All these things he described in detail way back in 4th century. Sequence of time of occurrence was also described. Pattern of people suffering from the disease also he described. Disproved supernatural causation. Those days, they used to think of supernatural forces as the cause of the disease, and he said that no supernatural. It must be something which is related to the physical disease. Romans, they have tried a lot to prevent this disease by developing wonderful sewage systems and by developing water carrier systems, and they tried to reduce the water stagnation, and they were partially successful. Laveran is a person who has described the malarial parasite, the mosquito, 1897. Ronald Ross, he has described the Ross cycle inside the mosquito. And this is beginning of malarial control. Till this time, they are only having some sort of vague idea how the disease is transmitted. After Ronald Ross has showed the evidence of mosquito cycle, we came to the understanding that this disease is transmitted by mosquito in this manner and that manner, like that. Control measures were implemented because we came to know some of the ways in which the disease is transmitted. You can see Ronald Ross and Camille Golgi has described the mosquito cycle inside the human being. I want to skip this because it's not very important. Discovery of DDT was made in 1942. Even before our independence, DDT was discovered. It was used in Italy in 1944 very successfully, and spraying of DDT was started all over the world. It was coating of marshes with paraffin was also described, and when once paraffin is there on the marshes, it was floating on the water surface. It was preventing the mosquitoes to lay the eggs in the water. Draining of stagnant water was started way back in 1944 itself. Use of nets and the chloroquine has followed little later. That shows that the health promotional measures have started first, and they have partially controlled the disease. At that time, it's almost about 80 years back. WHO estimates that there are about 2.3 billion people at risk. That means we have a population of about 7.5 billion. Out of that, almost 1/3 of the population in the world is at a risk of developing malaria even now. And at any given point of time, 300 to 400 million people are infected. And every year, 2 million people die due to malaria. We are talking about coronavirus. So far, it's only 5 lakh people have died in the world. And as far as the malaria is concerned, already 1 million people have died. This is July month, half of the year. Okay, about 1 million people have already died due to malaria. That means I'm not trying to say that COVID is less important, but we have to understand that the death due to so many other diseases is much more than COVID-19. And there is a sort of a scare among the people that because of the preoccupation with COVID-19, we may neglect the preventive measures of other diseases, and the other diseases may cause death of people instead of COVID-19. And it is way ahead of many other infectious diseases as far as the fatality is concerned. Tuberculosis is number 1, and we have got malaria number 2. These are the malaria endemic countries, and probably this table is worth recording. You can note down. Shall I give you 2 to 3 minutes time to write in your book? Shall I give you? Is it all right? Say yes or no. You can see here that the incidence in thousands, India is highest, and all other countries are very much low, less when compared to this. But again, you can see this column. This column clearly shows that the percentage of falciparum is very much important because it is a deadly disease. Falciparum is a deadly disease when compared to the vivax. So you can see Myanmar, you can see 85.5% of all the cases of malaria and falciparum cases. Whereas our country, luckily, we do not have so much of problem as far as falciparum is concerned. Malaria in India, it was described in Charaka Samhita. And 1930, every aspect of the life in this country was associated with malaria by 1930. Economic loss in 1935 was considered to be 10,000 million. Huge amount of economic loss. Now you can multiply this figure with 10, maybe 100,000 millions. 75 million cases and 8 lakhs deaths per year in 1953. And National Malaria Control Program was started in April 1953. 1993. That time I was a month's baby. Okay, this is the flow chart which shows the problem of malaria. Now coming to the agent factors, there are 4 species and they have got distinctive appearance and different patterns of symptoms are described each of the species. And there is a possibility, and it has been shown very clearly that in one area there may be more than 2 species. That means what I'm trying to say is that a place where there is falciparum, there may be the vivax also. Both the species can coexist. In fact, the same individual, same time. Please remember this, there is no cross immunity between these two. And same person may have both the species in the blood at the same time. Plasmodium vivax, the most common, geographically widespread. Usually, it accounts for about 80 to 90% of all malaria cases. And cutting across all the countries wherever malaria is existing, you find vivax is the most common species. Fortunately, though it is a very common one, it is least severe disease. And the recovery rate as far as vivax is concerned is almost 95 to 96%. Very rarely a person may die. Something like COVID-19, the recovery rate is good. There are possibility of relapses with vivax. That is one problem that you should remember, because the organisms may hide inside the liver. They are called as hypnozoites. These hypnozoites again revive, they cause the relapse of vivax, even without another bite of mosquito. Suppose you are staying in an area where there is malaria very common, you get malarial disease, and you are also treated and you recover from malaria, and you go to some other place where there is no malaria. Okay, say for instance, United States, no malaria. You migrate to that place. You may get malaria after 3 years because of the hiding organisms. They are called as hypnozoites. Chronic disease is very debilitating. I have seen many children, especially when I was working in Nigeria. I used to work near Abuja, almost about 50 kilometers from the capital, in a village. And I could see large number of children with the pot bellies. So I was thinking these children are suffering from protein energy malnutrition. But when I started examining them, every child aged between 5 to 15, every child almost, they had some enlarged spleen. So when I inquired about the reason, they said that, sir, everyone in this place has got malaria. There is no exception. You take blood smears from all the people, all of them will prove to be malaria positive. And malaria, initially it was a problem in the temperate areas, and now this vivax has shifted to tropical areas. Falciparum, less common, luckily. Responsible for most of deaths in Africa, not only Africa, other countries also. Falciparum is responsible for the high fatality rates. And the disease develops suddenly. And the child is playing very well. Suddenly the child develops unconsciousness and suddenly gets into coma. And the child is brought to the hospital in a comatose condition. And unfortunately, most of our clinicians, they don't think of malaria. They forget that problem. And they start treating the child for some other. If the child is immediately suspected of falciparum, they should conduct the test, the spear exam should be done, and immediately treatment is started. Probably there is a chance for saving the child, but most of the cases they are ignored. It leads to several life-threatening complications. If detected early, it is 100% curable. And one thing I have observed in most of the patients who had suffered falciparum, they have a prolonged, weakness. That is, the convalescence is extremely, long convalescence. The reason for this long duration of convalescence is because of rapid and massive destruction of red blood corpuscles, and they have that almost gross anemias post falciparum period. That's why they are they suffer from extreme degrees of prostration. Plasmodium malaria, it's a typical malaria symptoms. Persist in blood for decades. This is one disease which can persist. It is mostly asymptomatic. Very few symptoms can be seen. Infects through blood donations. This is one organism which is very commonly associated with blood donations. Wiped out from the temperate climates and persists in Africa and Karnataka. And in India, only one place in Karnataka that is called as Kolar. You have to remember, this may come as a MCQ also. Kolar of Karnataka is still having some cases of the Plasmodium malaria. Except for Kolar, our country doesn't have the malarial problem, the Plasmodium malaria. Whereas in Africa, there are a lot of foci where you can find malaria, Plasmodium malaria. Plasmodium ovale is very rare, and it is again very common in Western Africa, that is Nigeria, where I worked, and causes relapses, repeated relapses it causes. So that's all about the 4 types of this one. And to sum up, we have got 4 types of species. Out of that, vivax is the most common, and next is the falciparum, and malaria and ovale. They are only epidemiological significance, not much of clinical significance. In India, the proportion of vivax is between 60 to 65%. Falciparum is 35 to 40%. And we also have a mixed form, that is 4 to 8%. And malaria is less than 1%. Tumkur district and Kolar district, and these are the places. And a few studies have also shown that few places in Orissa also have got this problem. The asexual phase occurs in man, and sexual phase occurs in mosquito. Man becomes intermediate host, and the female Anopheles mosquito is the definitive host. Please remember this point. Wherever there is a sexual phase, that is called a definitive host. Wherever the asexual phase is there, that is called an intermediate host. That means we are all intermediate hosts, and mosquito is a definitive host. A reservoir of infection. Only human is the reservoir of infection. Mosquito is not a reservoir of infection. Carrier of many plasmodia, same time. You can carry many types of the, not easily diagnosed. The reservoir is not easily diagnosed. Children are gametocyte carriers. They may not have the adult organism, but they may have a lot of gametocytes. Epidemiologically, a better reservoir, a child is a better reservoir than the adult. Adult may not be a good reservoir, but children, small children are good reservoirs. Now, conditions for malarial transmission. Persons must harbor gametocytes. That means both gametocytes. Sufficient density should be there. That means 12 gametocytes should be there per cubic meter, millimeter. That is a cl. And it should be mature. Immature gametocytes picked up by the mosquito may not be viable and they may not live further. Okay, they should be viable. They should be both males and females, right? So when the mosquito is picking up the gametocytes, the gametocytes should be sufficient in number. Suppose the 2 or 3 gametocytes are picked up, it may not cause the zygote formation. And all the gametocytes should be mature. They should be viable. Both male and female should be there. Suppose by chance it is picking up only female gametocytes, probably the cycle may not continue. Now, next is, after biting an infected person, the mosquito has to live at least for 5 days. And if it is living less than 5 days, the cycle is not complete. Okay, so even though after picking up the gametocytes, the mosquito is biting another person immediately, it may not transmit the infective form of malaria. That's why the mosquito should live at least for 5 days to become infective. Please remember this. Find a susceptible host, right? A person should be susceptible for this. I will tell you what is a susceptible host little later. And inject sufficient number of sporozoites. Otherwise, a small number of sporozoites, the body immediately kills them and we may not get disease. The modes of transmission, vector transmission, that is through the mosquito, that is Anopheles, female mosquito. What is the vector in malaria? It's not just Anopheles, Anopheles, female mosquito. Anopheles, male mosquito is not a vector, it doesn't transmit. Okay. Now, why female mosquitoes transmit, why not the male mosquitoes? The reason is, female mosquitoes only bite the human being. Female mosquitoes only bite the animals, whereas male mosquitoes are pure vegetarians. They never bite any animal or a human being. And why only female bites a human being or animal? The reason is, it has to produce sufficient number of eggs or ovum production inside its body requires the human blood or animal blood. Without that, it cannot reproduce. For that sake, it sucks the blood and it can also suck the plant juices. The female also can live on the plant juices, but unless otherwise it sucks the blood of the human being or animal, it cannot perpetuate. That's why it bites you. And it is not that every female mosquito, the Anopheles mosquito, wants to bite you. It wants to bite you only when it requires. Okay. So I'm not trying to support the mosquito. I'm only simply trying to give you the the dynamics of mosquito biting. And direct transmission is possible when suppose you are giving a blood transfusion which contains the sporozoites. You can directly be infected. And sometimes even it can be transmitted to the infected syringes and the needles. Especially it happens in northeastern states like Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, where there is a lot of drug addictions. These people, they use the needles and syringes to inject their drugs, and through this they can infect the people in a direct way. The congenital malaria is very rare. A mother is suffering from malaria and the organisms are transmitted through the blood through the placenta to the child. The child may be born with malaria, but fortunately, congenital malaria is not a fatal disease. The child may develop fever for some time, or sometimes the child may develop splenomegaly. And if you can treat the child will come back to normal within no time. Okay. Now, incubation period it's almost minimum 7 days. It may extend up to 30 days in the case of malaria. Whereas in the case of falciparum and also the vivax, it is 7 to 14 days, just like your COVID-19. The COVID-19 also, the incubation period is up to 7 to 14 days, and malaria also, it is 14 days. Whereas malaria is a protozoan, whereas COVID is a virus. But still the incubation periods are almost same. Only Plasmodium malaria has got a very long incubation period. The vectors is a female Anopheles mosquito. There are nearly 45 species of Anopheles mosquito. 45 species of mosquitoes. Culicine is the most common one. Anopheles fluviatilis, hilly regions. It is the hilly regions, it is fluviatilis. Anopheles minimus, again in the hilly regions. Anopheles philippinensis, usually in the plains. Anopheles stephensi, this is again MCQ question. You can remember, the most common species in the urban malaria is Anopheles stephensi. They can give all these names and they may ask you to choose the right answer. Anopheles stephensi is always the urban mosquito which causes malaria. Anopheles sundiacus is again a coastal area like Visakhapatnam and Bhimli. These are the areas where you get a lot of sundiacus. So, see, out of the 45 species, only a few species of Anopheles, they transmit the malaria, whereas other species may not transmit the disease. And one quick rundown about the life cycle of mosquitoes. Can you see this larva? What is this larva? This is Anopheles larva, and the distinguishing feature is that it always lies parallel to the water level. It doesn't make an angle with the water line, right? Okay. You can see here, it is lying parallel to the, this is the water line. You can see the blue line here, and it lies parallel to the water line. Whereas other larvae, they usually make an angle with the water line. Now, age, the host factors affects all ages, and it can even affect a newborn child, and there is always a possibility of congenital malaria. But the point at which you have to remember at this point, at this time, is that it is extremely rare in the case of infants and also rare in the children below 5 years. Now, you may ask me a question, sir, why it is rare among children and infants? The reason is that the children, the blood, the RBC are fetal hemoglobin. RBC contains fetal hemoglobin, and the malarial parasite cannot survive on the fetal hemoglobin. That's why, even though the organism is entering the body of an infant, it is not able to survive there because there is a lot of fetal hemoglobin, and which is not acceptable to the organism. Preschool children are highly vulnerable after 2 years. Again, the children are highly vulnerable. Newborn infants are not infected usually. Even the organism enters the body, it is quickly killed because of lack of survival. Males are more prone, and it is a common feature with so many diseases. Males are always at high risk of getting the disease. The reason is males are having higher body mass, body metabolic rate, BMR, and so they exhale a large quantities of carbon dioxide. When the carbon dioxide is there around you, around the male, the mosquitoes are easily attracted. Mosquitoes, though they have a compound eye, it's rarely used for the vision. It is rarely used for its motility. It usually goes by smell and also by virtue of its ability to detect carbon dioxide. It is very much fond of carbon dioxide. So when once a lot of carbon dioxide is there around a male who is working, and that male is at a risk of getting malaria. High BMR and high carbon dioxide. These are the two important points you should remember. And the male mostly living outside, so he is getting bitten by the mosquitoes. And less cloth. Now coming to the race, sickle cell traits are less likely to suffer malaria because this is a God's gift to the sickle cell patients, and they do not suffer from malaria. Sickle cell disease is inherited disease. African parts of India and Mediterranean region, you find a lot of sickle cell cases. And sickle cell gene is there. That gene doesn't allow the plasmodium to grow inside the RBC. Try to understand this point. Okay. So when you have the diagnosis of sickle cell, you should be very careful in diagnosing malaria in that individual. Okay. This is one sort of a marker for South and Central America, Caribbean and Middle East. You got some cases of sickle cell disease. Immunity, I want to give you a special attention to all of you because the immunity in the case of malaria is extremely unique, unlike any other diseases. A person's living in endemic areas for a longer period, they develop a sort of a immunity. It is very slow and short-lived. As long as malarial organism is circulating in the environment, the immunity exists there. It's not a sterilizing immunity. That immunity cannot cause complete death of all the organisms. It can protect the individual from a low dose of infections, from a minimum dose of infections. It is not having much protection against the infection. It is also called as a partial immunity. And parasitemia is not eliminated. In spite of having this slow and short-lived immunity, parasites still continue to grow inside the body. This type of immunity is called as priminution. Please remember and underline. You may get a short notes, priminution. When you get a short notes, you have to give all these points. It's a slow and short-lived. It is not a sterilizing immunity. There is no protection against infection. There is a state of partial immunity, and parasitemia is not eliminated. In spite of having that immunity, the person may get the disease, but the disease may be very mild disease. The environment factors include rain. Okay, whenever there is a rain starts, especially the malarial season starts in the first week of May, it extends up to the end of August or the beginning of September. These are the malaria months. If the rain is too much, again, malaria doesn't exist. In Assam and several other places where the heavy rain occurs, there may not be malaria at all. Similarly, if the rain is too less, again, it may not occur. Linked to altitudes. The malaria doesn't exist above 3,000 feet. In the hill areas, there is no malaria. And again, in the high-raised apartment, if you are staying in a flat which is in the 11th or 12th or above, you will not get malaria. Though people in the same apartment, in the third floor or second floor, first floor may get malaria. In the same floor, same apartment you are living, but you are living at a higher level, you will not get malaria. So it is safer, and if you want to protect yourself from malaria, it is better to go to the higher areas. Water scarcity sometimes can cause high level of malaria because Whenever there is a water scarcity, you tend to retain or store a lot of water, and this stagnant fresh water is responsible for this. Large scale irrigation projects and government of India during the initial phases of Nehru regime, they have developed, they have constructed a lot of dams and irrigation projects, and probably that was the reason why we had a very huge level of malarial transmission at that time. There are several types of epidemiological forms which I am not describing now because it is not at a UG level. Only remember that there are epidemic forms, endemic forms, desert forms, border forms, urban form, a rural form, and a tribal form. All these are distinct malarial entities. The treatment and as well as prevention and control measures are slightly different from each other, right? Whatever measures that you take for epidemic form may not be same for endemic form, may not be same for desert form. Like that, you should identify the epidemiological form whenever you're planning for the prevention of malaria. Now, coming to measurement of malaria, you got annual parasite incidence, annual blood examination rate, slight positivity rate, slight falciparum rate, and annual falciparum incidence. These are the 5 types of measurements that you are supposed to do at the time of malarial episodes, right? Out of this, annual parasite incidence rate is very important because it demarcates the entire country into 2 regions. Annual parasite incidence less than 2 is an area where malarial transmission is low. Annual parasite incidence more than 2, it's a high level of incidence. So even for a strategic purpose, even control measures, the strategies in the areas where API is less than 2 is different from where the areas are having API more than 2. And as far as typical malarial symptoms are concerned, there's cold stage, hot stage, and sweating stage. Okay, and we used to believe those days when we were undergraduates, we used to mug up that these 3 stages, and we used to write it in the examination also. But as things went on, we found that the typical features are extremely rare now. You don't have that all the 3 stages, and don't think of these stages for diagnosis of malaria, right? Please understand this. In the modern times, malaria may not have all the 3 stages. You simply have a fever and a remitting fever. That means a periodic fever. It occurs once in 24 hours, once in 48 hours, and in between the patient feels all right. If you find fever which is like this, you may have to think of malaria. In the endemic areas, fever alone is enough for diagnosis. Don't ask for any more questions. If you are living in an endemic area, anyone suffering from fever may be having malaria. So you have to think of malaria. If it is recurrent and asymptomatic, recurrent fever and during rainy season, these are all the markers or indicators to think of malaria. A fever, the recurrent fever, asymptomatic fever, and rainy season. These are the markers by which you have to suspect malaria in that area. There are several atypical features. And these atypical features are seen in falciparum malaria and early infection also. Extremes are this. A person having 65, 70 years old, he gets malaria. He may have a different type of malaria. He doesn't even have a fever. There is what is known as algid malaria, where the person suffers from extreme degrees of purging. You have a lot of loose motions. Nobody thinks that it is the case of malaria. Sometimes, if this clinician is wise enough, he may think of malaria, especially if it is in endemic areas. Immunocompromised persons chemoprophylaxis is given to, in these different situations, you may have atypical features. Now, diagnosis of malaria, it's a peripheral smear, QBC, that is quantitative Buffy coat, parasite F test, optimal assay type, immunochromatographic test, polymerase PCR, and detection of antibody. These are the various types of diagnostic tests that we have, but we have retained and we always recommend to you also the peripheral smear. If the peripheral smear is collected properly and examined properly, this is the best way of diagnosis of malaria. Okay, and QBC, again, it may give you some additional information, especially when the disease is a low-grade disease and you have got a very strong suspicion of malaria and peripheral smear is negative. In such a situation, you can send the patient for QBC test. And because even if one organism is there in 5 million RBC, you can get a positive result in the case of QBC. Whereas the peripheral smear, when the infection is very low level, you may not be able to detect the parasites in the blood. Okay. The only two things you remember, peripheral smear and the QBC, these are the two things that you have to remember. Now, I just want to give you some steps in the preparation of the smear. You have to use gloves because if you are by chance getting injured by the needle, the organism may directly enter your body and you can get malaria without even mosquito bite. Use disposable needles and lancets. Dispose all the contaminated materials, avoid injury, prepare thick and thin smears and wash hands after the smear is prepared. These are the points and the steps that you have to remember. One is, without gloves, don't take the blood smears, and use a disposable needle and lancets. All the contaminated material should be disposed of and try to avoid injury. You can see here, this is the thick smear, this is the thin smear. You may ask me a question, why it is both the things are necessary. The thick smear, you can rapidly go through the thick smear and find out whether the blood is having the organism or not. Okay. Now, after finding out the organism in the thick blood, now you go to thin smear and find out which species it is. For the diagnosis of malaria, thick smear is sufficient. For the diagnosis of the type of malaria, you require thin smear. And a person should be skillful enough to prepare thick and thin smears. A raw person without training cannot do anything, cannot do this. And all these smears may have to be thrown into the dustbin. The staining is Giemsa stain, and the steps are already told to you in the microbiology department. Leishman stain, not very important. And the staining with JSB, you have to remember, because Government of India has adopted this type of stain, not the Leishman stain. JCB stain is the stain is recommended for all the smears in this country under National Malaria Eradication Program. It's a rapid staining method, very simple method. Parasite stain clearly and not for laboratories. It is not meant for laboratories. Whenever you are doing in the periphery, it is useful. Coming to the other one, that is quantitative Buffy coat technique. It is developed by Bacon and Dickinson. Again, it may be a MCQ. It's a new method for identifying staining of the centrifuged and compressed cells. RBC layer with acridine orange. You can see here. This is the layer containing the organisms. You need not see the entire tube. You have to see only at this point where all the organisms are present, and it is examined under UV light and the organisms are easily detected by the shining or the light that they are emitting under UV light. It's fast and easy and highly sensitive. And even I told you already that if a person is having one organism in 5 million RBC, one organism, still it can be detected. And I don't want to, this one. Again, treatment also we do not do. Now, protection of household water collections. These are the things I just want to show you the pictures. Fogging, indoor spraying, guppy fish. Again, this is one very important protective measure, guppy fishes. The guppy fishes are available in this country in almost all the areas, especially rural areas, and they are very small fishes, and they are very much adaptive to swallow large number of larvae. In fact, a small guppy fish can eat away almost 100 to 200 larvae at a given point of time. That means they've got a lot of affinity for the mosquito larvae. Okay, and under the National Malaria Eradication Program, Government of India has recommended that guppy fishes should be developed or maybe left in the unused freshwater collections, especially in the villages. We have got a lot of wells, and only a few wells are used for drinking water. The remaining wells are rarely used. So in those wells, it may be possible. It is possible that the mosquitoes can grow. So in these wells, the guppy fishes can be, easily developed, and you can bring about a wonderful control of this. This comes under biological control of the mosquitoes. And one more point here I would like to give you is that guppy fish is very much suitable for our country because our people have got the habit of catching the fishes and eating them, right? So if the guppy fish is there, it is not edible and it doesn't have much meat. So that's why people don't even catch these guppy fishes. So that way, the guppy fishes which are left for the control, they survive. Otherwise, our people can catch and eat them for their purposes. Gambusia fish is a very big fish, and maybe in foreign countries it is used. Now we are not using it. Gambusia is also very costly fish, and if you use this gambusia in our country, people will catch these fishes and eat them. Instead of gambusia eating the mosquitoes, and we start eating the gambusia, which is a very sad thing. That's why we don't recommend gambusia in this country. Bacillus spiricus, it is again a small bacillus. It infects the larvae and kills the larvae. Now, wear full sleeves, protect yourself from the biting. Close your doors and windows at least by 6 o'clock in the evening. Use a mosquito net. Use a mosquito net. And don't indiscriminately throw the coconut shells like this. We have the habit of enjoying the coconut water, and once your coconut water is completed, you just throw it like that. This small coconut shell can collect a lot of water inside, and these are the places where the mosquitoes can grow rapidly. Now, I just want to give you a quick rundown of malaria control, and I just want to impress upon you that malaria is not so easy to get. Even though we have got mosquito, even though we have got plasmodium, it's not so easy for us to get the disease. Why? There should be mosquitogenic conditions. Anopheles mosquito breeds in fresh water. At least it should be breeding for at least 7 days. If the fresh water is kept only for 3 days, 4 days, again mosquito cannot grow there. The adult mosquito bites a person suffering from malaria during its lifetime. Picks up enough number of males and female gametocytes will continue the mosquito. If it is, I already told you, it should pick up both male and female gametocytes. Gametocytes develop into mature into infect another person. The extensive incubation should be completed. It should bite a healthy person several times. One bite of mosquito may not cause malaria. It should bite a person so that the dose of infection is completed. Persons should be susceptible for the disease. It is biting a person who is already having chemoprophylaxis. There is no point, there is no chance for infection. It's biting a person aged less than 1 year or 2 years, again there is no chance. Like that, the person should be susceptible for the disease. And a person who has got a premonition, again, he is not susceptible for the disease. Now, avoid the stagnation of fresh water, decrease the lifespan of mosquito, avoid the mosquito bite, and develop premonition. These are some of the important points which you should remember. And the 10 points for prevention are like this. Close your doors and windows between 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Wear full clothing. It's a sort of a revision for you. Close or seal all the stored water. Use impregnate mosquito nets. Keep the house very clean. Use insect repellents if possible. Use guppy fish in the well water. Empty all the wastewater collections repeatedly. Alert the family members on the symptoms. Encourage the indoor spraying. So these are all the 10 points of the control. Regarding the National Malaria Eradication Program and the National Program for the Prevention of the Vector-borne diseases, we'll have a separate class. And all these points which I have learned today are important for to learn about National Malaria Eradication. So I would like to conclude by saying that malaria is there from times immemorial. We have been trying to eradicate this disease, and most of the developed countries have already eradicated it. We also almost eliminated the disease at one point of time, but due to our negligence and various other factors, it has come back, and it's still having a large number of, we are still having a large number of malaria cases in this country. So let us learn from the National Malaria Eradication Program from Dr. Mohan Rao. We will be talking to you a little later on the control of the malaria. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patient hearing.